Welcome to VNT. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The American legal system is built on rules meant to ensure fairness, even for non-citizens. These rules are designed to protect the vulnerable and uphold justice, no matter where someone was born or what language they speak. But what happens when the government itself breaks those rules? That's the story of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a story that reveals what's at stake when the system falters. Kilmar fled gang violence in El Salvador as a teenager, escaping threats that haunted his daily life. He arrived in the United States seeking safety and hope, and over nearly 15 years, he built a life in Maryland. He worked hard, started a family with his U.S. citizen wife, and became part of his community. Neighbors knew him as a dedicated worker and a loving husband, someone who contributed to the place he now called home. In 2019, an immigration judge ruled that deporting him would put his life in danger and granted him protection, a legal order called withholding of removal. This was not a small decision. It recognized the real risks Kilmar faced if forced to return. This order was supposed to shield him from deportation, giving him a rare sense of security after years of uncertainty. The government had accused him of gang ties, but the judge found no evidence, no proof to support the claims. The court's decision was clear and based on facts, not suspicion. The law was clear. Kilmar was to be protected. His right to stay was not just a matter of paperwork, but a matter of life and death. But in the spring of 2025, everything changed. A single event would upend the life he had fought so hard to build. A so-called administrative error shattered his legal shield. A simple mistake in paperwork, overlooked by officials, suddenly put Kilmar at risk again. Suddenly, the machinery of government that was supposed to protect him turned against him. The very system that had promised him safety now threatened to take it away. His case would soon test the limits of power between the courts and the president, raising questions about who truly holds the final say in matters of life, law, and justice. What began as one man's fight for safety became a national legal battle, drawing attention from activists, lawyers, and the media across the country. And it all started with a single devastating mistake, a reminder that in the American legal system, even the smallest error can change a life forever. In March 2025, Kilmar was arrested by ICE agents in Baltimore, despite the court order protecting him. This shocking event unfolded in broad daylight, leaving onlookers and his family in utter disbelief. His family was left in shock. They had believed that the legal system would protect him, but now they were grappling with a harsh new reality. The system meant to protect him had failed. The court order, which was supposed to be a shield, had been rendered meaningless. The government called it an administrative error, but the consequences were deadly serious. This so-called error had life-altering implications for Kilmar and his family. Within days, Kilmar was deported to El Salvador and sent straight to Secot, a notorious mega prison for suspected gang members. This was a place known for its harsh conditions and brutal treatment of inmates. The very danger the U.S. court had tried to prevent became his new reality. Kilmar found himself in a perilous situation, surrounded by violence and uncertainty. This deportation directly violated the 2019 court order. The legal document that was supposed to safeguard his rights had been blatantly ignored. The executive branch ignored a clear judicial command, a fundamental breakdown in the legal process. This was not just a mistake, it was a serious breach of the rule of law. Now Kilmar was a prisoner in a foreign country, his life at risk every day. The fear and uncertainty he faced were unimaginable. His family in Maryland faced a nightmare, fighting for his life from thousands of miles away. They were desperate, clinging to hope and seeking justice. His lawyers argued the government had acted unlawfully and must fix its mistake. They were determined to hold those responsible accountable. The battle to correct this injustice would have to be fought in the very courts that had been ignored. It was a daunting task, but one they were ready to undertake. The stakes were now about more than one man. They were about the power of the law itself. This case had become a symbol of the fight for justice and the integrity of the legal system. Kilmar's lawyers rushed to federal court in Maryland, demanding immediate action to save their client. The stakes were high, and every moment counted. They knew that if they didn't act quickly, Kilmar's fate could be sealed forever. Judge Paula Zinnes recognized the urgency of the situation. She wasted no time, ordering the government to do everything in its power to secure Kilmar's release and safe return to the United States. Her message was clear. This was not a case for half measures or bureaucratic delays. Judge Zinnes required daily updates from the government, no excuses, no delays, and no exceptions. The court would be watching every step, but the Trump administration pushed back hard, arguing that the court's order interfered with presidential authority and complicated sensitive foreign policy matters. They insisted the judiciary was overstepping its bounds. Government lawyers claimed they couldn't force El Salvador to release Kilmar, saying their hands were tied by international law and diplomatic realities. The government quickly appealed Judge Zinnes's order, hoping that higher courts would side with them and overturn the ruling. But the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously upheld Judge Zinnes's order, sending a powerful signal that the rule of law must be respected, even by the highest levels of government. Judge Wilkinson, writing for the court, sharply criticized the government for defending its own power instead of correcting its mistake. He made it clear that justice demanded more than excuses. The message from the courts was unmistakable. When the government violates a court order, it must fix the problem, no matter how difficult. Accountability was not optional. The government could not simply walk away from its error or ignore the consequences of its actions. The eyes of the nation were now on the case. The legal battle had become a test of whether the rule of law could truly prevail over executive power, and whether justice would be served for Kilmar. The fight was far from over. The outcome would shape not just Kilmar's future, but the very meaning of justice in America. The Trump administration took the fight to the Supreme Court, arguing that forcing the executive branch to negotiate with a foreign government intruded on presidential powers. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, recognizing its national importance. The issue was no longer just about Kilmar. It was about the separation of powers. During arguments, the court's liberal justices warned that allowing the government to ignore court orders would create a dangerous loophole. They questioned whether the government could simply deport anyone, even a U.S. citizen, and claim it was powerless to fix its mistake. The stakes were enormous. Could the courts enforce their orders when the executive branch refused? The Supreme Court's involvement meant the entire country was watching. The rule of law itself was on trial. In April 2025, the Supreme Court issued a unanimous decision. All 9 justices agreed. The government must act to bring Kilmar back, but the court softened the order's language. Instead of effectuate his return, the government was told to facilitate it. A subtle but important shift. This respected the president's authority in foreign affairs while affirming the judiciary's power to remedy legal wrongs. Both sides claimed victory. The administration said the court affirmed executive power. Kilmar's lawyers said the core order remained. The unanimous verdict sent a powerful message. No branch of government is above the law. Even conservative justices agreed the administration had to act. The fight wasn't over, but the courts had spoken with one voice. The case returned to the lower courts, with the balance between branches still in play. The struggle for justice continued. The Supreme Court's decision didn't end the standoff. It escalated it. The administration appeared to delay compliance, citing diplomatic obstacles. On the day of the ruling, El Salvador's President Bukele, visiting the White House, refused to release Kilmar, calling him a terrorist. This gave the Trump administration an excuse for inaction. Critics accused the government of hiding behind foreign resistance to avoid obeying the courts. The standoff threatened a constitutional crisis, testing the checks and balances at the heart of American democracy. If the executive branch defies court orders, the judiciary's options are limited. Contempt orders could be issued, but enforcement would pit one part of the executive branch against another. Kilmar's case exposed the fragile boundaries between branches of government. The rule of law was being tested in real time. The outcome would shape the limits of presidential power for years to come. Kilmar Abrego. Garcia's story is more than an immigration case. It's a lesson in the rule of law. When the government ignored a court order, it challenged the authority of the entire judicial system. This case is a reminder of why checks and balances matter. The courts acted as a check on executive power, defending individual rights. If a president can ignore the courts, everyone's rights are at risk. Legal protections are not just words, they have real consequences. Upholding the law for one means upholding it for all. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision affirmed that the law must be followed, but the ongoing standoff shows that this principle must be constantly defended. Kilmar's fight is a test of America's commitment to justice, fairness, and the rule of law.